Welcome to Beatsource Tech. My name is Mojaxx and today we're looking at the Mixon 8 Pro from Reloop. This is a product which took an incredibly long time to actually hit store shelves after being announced at the NAMM show in 2022. And that means that the hype cycle around it, by the time you could actually buy one, had pretty much died down. So today I'm asking, is it still worth your attention?
Yes, it took about a year for the Mixon 8 Pro to actually become available to buy, and that definitely wasn't deliberate. It seems that it just got caught up in the supply chain issues that every manufacturer was dealing with at the time. But this summer it did finally hit the stores, and I've been playing around with it for a couple of months, so this is absolutely a full review, not a first look. The Mixon 8 Pro is a 4-deck controller designed to work with Serato DJay Pro and Agolriddim's DJay Pro on macOS, Windows, iOS and iPadOS. It unlocks the full version of Serato DJay Pro, but you'll need to pay for the DVS expansion if you want to use that, and you'll need a subscription for Agolriddim's apps. It has a street price of around $1,250 in the US, which puts it in the upper tier of controllers, up against things like the Denon DJay SC Live 4 and the Rain 1, but below things like the DJay Flex 10 from Pioneer DJ. Who is the Mixon aimed at? Well, Reloop don't specify, but to me it really feels like it's ideal for mobile DJs. That's not to say it won't work well for bar use and that kind of thing, but looking at the layout, the feature set and the ability to use tablets, that's the impression I get. And it would certainly not look out of place as the centerpiece of a pro mobile rig. It isn't gigantic at just shy of 26 inches wide, and it's only around 12.5 pounds in weight, so it's easy to carry, but it has the imposing stature that many DJs prefer in that kind of setup. The build quality is great with metal pots everywhere. The case is mostly plastic with a metal top plate, which helps keep the weight low, but because it's not very tall, it feels very dense and solid in hand. The capacitive jog wheels are very accomplished with a smooth feel, and they're highly responsive to touch. Like all jog wheels of this type, some DJs will love the amount of resistance and others won't, and there's no adjustment for that. But I think Reloop have settled on a good all-round setting. I found the very low profile jogs on the older Mixon 4 a little unwieldy for pitch bending, so I'm much happier with the taller ones found on here. I believe this is the first time we've ever seen in-jog displays on a Reloop controller, and I like those too. They aren't the prettiest things in the world, but they are jam-packed with info, like USB and deck assignments, time, BPM, pitch, and a virtual playhead. They're also bright, clear, and easy to read. I really appreciate that they look identical with both Agolriddim's DJay and Serato DJay Pro, so there is a nice level of consistency there. Reloop says that the Mixon 8 Pro features what they call ultra-glide faders, and I don't actually know what that means, but they all felt good during my testing period with no premature wear and tear, and the crossfader has a tight cut and respectably short cut-in distance. So although a device like this will never be a turntablist dream, you can pull off some solid cuts with it. The one quirk, if you can call it that, of the layout is that the Mixon 8 Pro uses a mirrored control scheme with both pitch faders on the outside of the unit. This is very different from the club-style layout, which is found on many controllers these days, where both deck sections are laid out identically. There are valid arguments to be made for both layout options. This one keeps the left-hand pitch fader well away from the up faders, for example, but as I'm somebody who uses a variety of both modular and all-in-one kit, I find the mirrored option a little frustrating. Many times at gigs I found myself hitting pad 5 on the right deck when trying to press play, but that's really a muscle memory thing, and if the Mixon is your main or only controller, you'll get comfortable on it quickly enough even if you aren't to begin with. Reloop don't specify much about the quality of the digital to analog conversion aside from saying it's 24-bit, but I found the unit sounded really good on a variety of systems with a clean and punchy profile. Even the phono preamps are pretty decent. They aren't the best I've ever heard, sure, and they're a touch shrill in the upper mids, but considering the type of device they're in, I'm really not complaining. The only slight issue I had was when I was trying to play vinyl with both a computer and an iPad connected, I was getting some kind of ground loop. That may have just been specific to my studio, but regardless, disconnecting the iPad resolved it immediately. Speaking of the phono preamps, I do want to note that the Mixon 8 Pro does function as a standalone mixer. You don't need to connect a phone, tablet or computer to get sound out of it. The mics, line and phono inputs will all still work, so if you have a catastrophic software meltdown, you can still keep the party going with a backup source. Which brings me to the connections. There are two mic inputs, with mic 1 being on an XLR jack combo socket on the rear and mic 2 having a jack socket on the front. Power is delivered via an external DC power brick, which is never my preference but understandable given the low profile of the device. Then next to that are 3 USB ports. USB-A has a regular USB-B port to connect to a computer, but that can also be switched over to the USB-C port, which is designed for iOS or iPadOS use. That port not only provides data, but also charges the connected device too. I did wonder if it would also do power delivery with an Apple laptop, but that didn't work in my testing. Then you have USB-B, which is another USB-B port for a computer. All that combined with the individual assignment switches on each channel, and you have an incredibly flexible setup there, which I'll demonstrate to you shortly. Each of the 4 channels then also has a set of RCA inputs, with the outer 2 being line level only and the inner 2 being switchable between line and phono. I already mentioned playing actual vinyl through the controller, but DVS in Serato DJay Pro also worked exactly as expected. Outputs are comprehensive, with master out on balanced XLRs and unbalanced RCAs, and a separate booth output on balanced jacks. All good there. The Mixon 8 Pro will integrate happily into any professional rig. Before we move on to the demo, I do want to talk about the slot on the rear for your iPad. I say iPad because my iPhone 12 Pro Max wouldn't fit very comfortably in it because of the small bezel, and my older iPhone XR wouldn't fit in it at all. Both 11-inch and 12.9-inch iPad Pros sat in there quite happily though. The method of mounting is quite limited. There's no way to adjust the viewing angle or anything like that, and I'm a touch fearful of what would happen if the device was pulled or leant on, but I can't think of another solution which wouldn't add significant bulk to the controller. Ultimately, I ended up using a separate stand at my gigs for my iPad, not least because I prefer not to have a big screen directly between myself and the audience, but I suspect for many, this simple default option will fit their workflow just fine.
So I'm going to talk you through this thing as live. I think that's really the best way to highlight the flexibility of the Mixon 8 Pro. You know, this thing has a lot going on. It's a 4-deck controller, and you can do 4 decks with both Agolriddim's DJay Pro and with Serato DJay Pro, but you can have both at the same time, and that's what I've got running here at the moment. So on the outside channel here on the left, I have the microphone coming in. This is microphone 1. That's going into the XLR connection on the rear. Now that does take over a channel, so you can't do 4 decks and 1 or 2 mics, because mic 2 is on the channel 4 here on the right hand side. You do need to make sure the mic 1 on is turned on. I made the mistake of not turning that on when I first filmed this, and yeah, it didn't record the mic because it wasn't going through the XLR outputs. So yes, bear that in mind. You need, even though you can hear it in the headphones, you do need to turn it on to make it live. It's a good kind of safety feature. As you can hear, the mic sounds pretty good, and although yes, you are giving up a main channel for that, it does mean you get the ability to EQ the mic, so you can adjust that. You've got trim control as well. So I appreciate that kind of flexibility of it overall. I'm not a massive user of 4 decks on controllers. I'm not a big fan of big layering stuff going on. So for me, yeah, that's a good solution. It works well. You can run it through the filter as well. What I've not found a way of doing is assigning it to the effects in either platform. I haven't figured that out yet. There may be a way to do that, but if there is, it's something I'm missing. But yeah, overall, so there's my mic there on channel 3. Channel 1, I'm connected to Agolriddim's DJay Pro on my iPad Pro, which is hooked up in via USB-C into the rear, and it's wedged into the stand on the back there, and that is also charging that iPad Pro at the same time, which I really appreciate. And as you can see, that's working perfectly well. All connected, all running smooth. Then we move across, we've got on channel 2 over here, I've got this switch to USB-B on the rear, because USB-A I've got switched over to iOS and the USB-C connection. USB-B I've got going out to a MacBook Pro, and that's running Serato DJay Pro. And you can see, if you were just to glance at the hardware itself, you wouldn't know any different. The screens, the displays and the jogs look the same. The controls are all very, very similar. And that's the one thing that I think Reloop have really managed to pull off here. They've made the experience very similar when it comes to using both platforms. There are obviously some small differences. If you were to have everything covered in terms of it saying the correct stuff, this thing would look like a book, you know, it'd have text everywhere. But even down to the pad modes over here, so like Serato, the pad modes are all marked correctly. We've got hot cue, pitch play, loop roll, save flip, save loop, slicer, sampler, scratch bank, and of course you can use the assignment in the software to choose one of those pad modes. In my case, I generally have save loop assigned to stems. So because this hardware was designed before Serato stems existed, there's no dedicated stems controls for Serato, but you can assign a pad mode as you can do with other hardware. Over here on Agolriddim DJay Pro, the legends on there don't quite match up, but they're very close. So we've got hot cue, we've got pitch play. Loop roll is loop roll. Save flip is obviously not a thing, but you do have the effects, the instant pad effects, which I'm a big fan of. And obviously you can choose those and assign them and tweak them to your own taste. Then we have save loops, that one is marked correctly. Slicer is what it says on the tin. Sampler, again, there's dedicated sampler volume control, which I know a lot of people appreciate. And you can see these pads are big, they are bright, and they are responsive. I'm very happy with these pads in general, all good there. And then scratch bank's not a thing, so we have instead neural mix controls on the last pad mode there. And you know, the elephant in the room right now is that unfortunately neural mix from Agolriddim is not up to the standard of Serato stems or Virtual DJ stems 2.0, but you know it's only a matter of time. They were innovating in this space, you know they'll come back with something better at some point. They just haven't at this stage. So we have like solo modes, we have even a swap thing over on the right hand side. There's loads of options for your neural mix stuff going on there. Looking at the rest of the controls, they all kind of function in much the same way. So we've got the cue, we have the play pause, that works the same on both. We have sync on and off. Shift button is there, so shift and sync to turn that off. We have parameter controls, which I really appreciate. We're seeing more and more controllers shipping without parameter controls, and I think that is kind of restricting. So I do like having those there for your different pad mode adjustments. Then we have the looping, which works the same on both platforms. So we've got auto loop. We have the LED there to show you which the value is selected. If you go beyond, then you go up to full LEDs lit. If you go below, then they flash. So that's a 4-beat loop, auto loop button above. And that functions the same on both platforms. In general, I do prefer a loop encoder, but if you're going to have a push button method of looping, then I've got no complaints about that at all. You also have active loop, and on shift you can do manual in and out points, etc. as well. So that's all working smoothly. Silent cue works on both platforms. So we can play and then drop in. So let's play silent cue and off it goes. Now that might be something you might not want to use that much on a controller, but bear in mind this is a DVS compatible device as well with Serato DJay Pro. So I might well want to do silent cue with that, but I use silent cue on every format all the time. Silent cue is one of my favorite features, and that works just as well over here on Agolriddim's DJay as well. So silent cue. Then we have the key lock button, you can reset and everything else, key sync, and then we have these long, accurate pitch faders, very much into these. They've got a great feel to them. There's no physical click or anything around 0. You do get the LED lights up, and the dead zone around 0 is pretty small. There's not a big area around 0, which I know frustrates a lot of DJs. Very minimal dead zone with those. Like hardly anything at all. So yeah, really into those. Happy with that. Moving on up, we have the browse controls. Now this is one area I'm not going to actually show you during this section of the video, because this is the one area right now you can see I'm running both platforms together and it's seamless, right? It's completely smooth. The one area where stuff can start to go a little bit weird is with browsing, because when I hit that browse knob, it will bring up the browser window in Agolriddim and it will start to scroll through my tracks in Serato DJay Pro, and it's doing both of them at the same time. And it can potentially get a bit confusing if you're doing a combination of touch and this control here on your iPad, for example, then things can go a little bit odd. So if you're going back to back with two DJs on this device, one using Agolriddim on iOS and one using a laptop, I would suggest that you generally load your tracks up manually using the devices rather than using the browse. If you're just using one platform, this browsing works absolutely superbly. You touch it, push it down, load your tracks using the buttons at the top. It's all very smooth. But when I've got both of these things active on different channels, it is a little bit odd on occasion. So just, yeah, that's the one area where it's not completely and utterly seamless. The next thing is the effects here. Now this is quite cool. We've got 4 paddles. This is something not sure we've seen before on a device like this. We have 4 effects paddles. The one thing you have to bear in mind on both platforms is that these paddles are like the final step of running your effects. You also have to arm them up at the top. So you've got the effects sections up here. So you've got level controls, dry wet controls, and you've got a beat division, beat parameter. So I can arm the echo on this one, hit it there. Just switch over. So in Agolriddim, it's post fader and post crossfader as well. Great. All working really well. We can do multiple effects at once. Adjust the wet dry for those. All good there. It's a similar situation with Serato over here. Again, we need to arm it. So I'm going to arm it, and then you can see it hasn't actually activated, so I need to do the paddle. And again, post fader and post crossfader, which is great. But because of the nature of the routing of this, because it's actually routing it through the software and it's assigning it to Serato's effects unit internally, there is a slight bit of weirdness there. So you'll notice here in Agolriddim, right, if I just bring this paddle towards me briefly, turn it on, arm it. You can hear it does tail, right? It's tailing out. Let me just do a longer one. You can hear the echo continues because of the way the assignment is working. In Serato DJay Pro, it doesn't quite work like that. So I've got my echo armed and it's there. If I drop this now and just kind of pull it towards me, now it's echoing. Now the echo stopped. So whatever they've done with the routing of this in Serato DJay Pro, it's not as good as it is in Agolriddim over there. Because a lot of the time I'll just want to add a quick like echo flourish to a track, you know, just catch a little moment, catch a snare or something. But I can't do it because the tail doesn't carry on. So that is, at this point now, I am kind of getting bored of wanting Serato to update their effects and change them. They do work fine, as they work as well as they do on anything else here. But that is a frustrating thing for me, that particular thing there. And you can just hear in the quality, you know, this echo, Serato's echo, compare that with that's just a better echo. It just is. So, you know, it's time that Serato did a bit of work on their effects, in my opinion, but there you go. Anyway, moving on up. All right, we have filters. There's software filters on both, but they sound slightly different, but they work just as well. No fuss with those. You have this little blue LED to tell you the filter is active, which is cool. And then we move on up to the EQs. Now the EQs, again, they're software EQs. What you can do with Agolriddim is you do have the ability to set them as neural mix EQ rather than just regular EQs. That's not an option you have with Serato. They do have that on some hardware, but not on this one. So again, once they get to their next generation of STEM processing, I'll be very excited about that. I generally prefer to have regular EQs and do my separation in other ways, but if you're an EQ kind of person for your neural mix, you'll be very happy with this.
If you find the tempo, then I'll bring the shadow.
And then we have my kind of biggest complaint with the actual hardware itself, which is related to these EQs, and that is, it's quite bright here in the studio, right? It's pretty bright. You can see what's going on with these fairly well. Put this in a dark environment, and these knobs with grey markings on a black knob literally disappear. Like I watched Cleveland Terry's review of this. You know, Cleveland is a friend of mine, and I always watch his stuff. And if you're looking at a product and we've both reviewed it, you should get both our perspectives on it. I completely think you should every time. And I thought he was exaggerating about the visibility issues with this mixer section until I took it out and gigged with it. And this section is literally invisible in the dark. You cannot see it at all. So if I was to own a Mixon 8 Pro, I would have to get some third-party knobs like cooler caps or DJay Tech Tools chroma caps or something along those lines. I think Reloop themselves do some different color caps, or they used to back in the day. But literally this section is just entirely invisible. I was scared to use my EQs because I couldn't see. I thought I'd load up the next track and I wouldn't be able to see that I'd got the bass down or whatever. The queuing is post EQ, so you can hear if the bass is down or whatever, but still, yeah, for me that was a pretty major issue, and it really reduced my fun of using the device, because it was so much fun using it at a gig, but not being able to see what's going on with this mixer section, yeah, it was pretty bad. Easily resolved though. You know, if Reloop could just switch up production and just put white markers on those, that would help a lot. But yeah, dark grey on black, not the most visible thing going on. There's one other thing I want to talk about with the stems aspect of things, or with the neural mix, and that is the effects for neural mix effects on Agolriddim over here. So let's pull it back to the beginning. What I'm going to do is hold shift, and I'm going to just arm for the vocal only. And now I'm going to turn on all three. And then when I activate the paddle, it's only affecting the vocal. So if we move it forward in the track, so I've got an echo, a flanger and a gate, and they're just affecting the vocal right now. And that rules. You can assign that to, you know, the instrumentation, to the drums, whatever you want to do. And the way the routing works, that isn't then post fader. So if I drop this down, we have an echo running on the vocal, but if I drop the fader, we don't have a tail on the vocal. But that's something I'm absolutely fine with, because the power of this, the sound of this, you can choose whatever effects you want to have running on that. Let's change that to a ping pong delay. You can come up with some wild stuff. Absolutely loving it. Amazing. So yeah, love that feature with Agolriddim DJay Pro. The neural mix effects is fantastic. That's not an option with Serato. Overall, I'm a big fan of that. I think I've covered most of the things on here at this point. Q split, it does have split Q, hardware split Q. Magical and wonderful. As an in-ear monitor user, I'm all about split Q, and I'm all about having it on the hardware. That's really good there. Of course, you have your Q master blend knob, you have the Q level, great volume output, both sizes of headphone jack on here, booth and master output, stereo and mono switch on the top panel, again easy to access. I haven't really talked about the 4-deck element, but you can see it's there. Big buttons for that. Crossfader assign, hardware, crossfader curve button on the front, software assignable curve for the up faders, and bright and clear LED meters as well. So yeah, overall, very, very impressed with this. few quirks here and there, mostly related to how it's been implemented with the software. But that really is all they are, just like little quirks. This thing in general is an absolute powerhouse. So there you go, my thoughts on the Mixon 8 Pro from Reloop. Overall, I've been really impressed by this. It's my favourite Reloop controller to date. A lot of that is down to the ergonomics of it, the comfort factor. Even though I'm personally not a big fan of mirrored layouts, everything about it does feel really good. You've got those big, responsive pads. You've got a nice layout when it comes to the mixer section, the 4 paddles to work with, the jog wheels are great. Everything about the feel of it is absolutely top notch. Combine that with the unparalleled ability to kind of easily switch between mobile devices, laptops, different software platforms, and you really have an incredibly flexible and powerful device, which I'm really quite happy to recommend to any DJ, mobile or not. In the comments this week, tell us about mobile devices in the booth. Have you switched over to Agolriddim's DJay or some other mobile app for your DJing, either all of the time, some of the time? Have you dabbled with it? I want to get the temperature of you guys and girls as a community. Let me know how you're feeling about mobile devices in the booth in 2023. Thank you for watching this episode of Beatsource Tech. I do hope you've enjoyed it or found it useful. If you have, please give the video a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos. I'll see you next time.